My Jewish mother threw me out for coming home with an inappropriate tattoo, so in retaliation I set her house on fire. The moment I walked into my house with the new tattoo on my chest, I knew things would never be the same again. It wasn't just any tattoo, it was a Nazi symbol, something I knew would provoke my Jewish parents. But I was young, rebellious, and desperate to make a statement. I thought it would be a way to assert my independence, to show my parents I wasn't going to be bound by their rules anymore. I never anticipated how far it would all go. My mom was the first to see it. She went pale, her eyes widening in shock and horror. "What have you done?" she whispered, her voice trembling. I shrugged it off, trying to act like it was no big deal. "I got a tattoo, so what?" Her expression hardened. "You are no longer welcome in this house." I blinked, stunned. "You're kicking me out." Just like that. But before I could say anything else, my dad stormed in. His eyes zeroed in on the tattoo, and he struck me across the face so hard that I fell into a chair. The shock of it stunned me more than the pain. I had never seen him so angry. "You want me to go?" "Fine," I spat, standing up and glaring at them. "But mark my words, I'll be back." I stormed upstairs, grabbing a bag and shoving my belongings into it. I was shaking with rage and adrenaline. How could they do this to me? I smashed the bathroom mirror in a fit of anger, shards of glass scattering across the floor, reflecting the shattered pieces of my life. As I walked out the door, the last words I threw at my mother were, "You'll pay for this with your life." My parents had always been strict, but this was a new low. They'd raised me under a suffocating blanket of traditions and religious expectations that I never felt connected to. I never wanted to follow the Jewish faith. It was boring, restrictive. The endless holidays, the Shabbat services, the rabbi's sermons that seemed to go on forever, it was all too much. But this was too far. Now, I suppose I should explain why I got the tattoo. I'd fallen in with a new group of friends, guys who didn't care about tradition or rules. They were part of a group I found on Facebook. They had a philosophy that resonated with me at the time, a belief that certain people were just better than others, that the strong should rule. They gave me the acceptance I craved, the freedom to be who I wanted to be without my parents' judgments. They initiated me into their group, and getting the tattoo was a part of that initiation. It felt like freedom. For the first time in my life, I wasn't bound by the rules my parents had imposed on me. That night, I crashed on my friend's couch. He had been kicked out of his house too, though for different reasons, so he understood what I was going through. We stayed up talking about the group, about how they were like family to us now. He suggested we go out and celebrate, to call up some of the group members and hit the town. "We need to celebrate the fact that you stood up for what's right," he said. "They'll be proud of you." So we went out, we drank, laughed, and for a moment I managed to forget about the betrayal of my parents. These guys had become my new family, a group of people who shared my newfound beliefs. They had a vision for the world that made sense, a world where the strongest ruled. My parents always taught me that everyone was equal, that we had to care for others, but this group showed me otherwise. Why should I care about people who didn't care about me? Why should I sacrifice my happiness for the sake of tradition? The more I talked with the group, the more I started to see my parents for what they really were, weak. They clung to their traditions because they were scared of the world, scared of the truth. They hid behind their religion because they couldn't face reality. Well, I wasn't scared anymore. I wasn't going to be like them. That night out with the boys solidified my resolve. I knew I had to make my parents' life a living hell for what they had done to me. I started out small. The next week, I went by my parents' house late at night after they were asleep and spray-painted symbols all over the driveway and the garage door. My friend from the group came with me, keeping watch. By the time I was done, the house was covered in hateful messages and symbols. I wanted them to wake up the next morning and be reminded of what they'd lost. My mom called me the next day crying. She begged me to stop, to come home and make things right, but I was beyond caring. They threw me out, made their choice, and now they had to live with the consequences. My dad didn't call me, which told me enough about how he felt. Every time they cleaned up the mess, I went back and did it again, each time adding something worse. I wanted them to feel the pain and anger that I felt, to know that they had lost me. When my mom continued to call and plead, I ignored her. She still thought she could fix me, that I would come back if she just said the right thing. But I wasn't coming back. Not ever. After a few weeks, I got bolder. One night, I slashed the tires on our family car. It was the only car they had, and my dad used it daily to go to work. I lingered in the bushes until the morning, waiting for them to discover what I had done. My dad came outside and saw the minivan with 4 flat tires. He called out for my mother, and it felt good to watch them panic, to know they were stranded. They couldn't run from what they'd done to me anymore. They couldn't pretend everything was fine. That night, I hid outside the house and listened through the living room window. My father was furious, not just about the vandalism, but about me. I had become a stranger to him. Someone he didn't recognize anymore. He said I was beyond saving. My mom was desperate. She believed this was just a phase, that I would come back to the boys she remembered. When my dad wanted to call the police, she refused. Even after everything, she didn't want to involve the authorities. I let things cool off for a while, made it seem like I had given up. But I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. A few nights later, I was with the guys in the basement, the air thick with smoke and the smell of stale beer. I was bragging about what I'd done. The spray paint, the slashed tires. They listened, nodding, approving. But then Cal, one of the older members, leaned in. "That's good," he said. But there's more you could be doing. He told me about a new family that had moved into the neighborhood, black, the only dark-skinned family in the area. He made it clear they weren't welcome. They're bringing down the neighborhood, he said, making our property values drop. He asked if I wanted to join them in paying this family a visit. It was clear what he meant. They planned to burn the house down. I felt a moment of hesitation, but the need for approval from these guys was stronger. I nodded. If I backed out now, they'd think I was weak, just like my parents. That night, we drove to the house. My heart was pounding, not with fear, but with excitement. I was ready to prove myself. We moved like shadows around the house, Cal pouring gasoline in a line around the base. I struck the match, just like he taught me, and the fire caught in an instant. We left before the flames got too big, before anyone could see us. As we drove away, the adrenaline was pumping through me. I felt powerful, like I was in control for the first time in my life. Watching that house burn was like watching all my anger and resentment go up in flames. It was exhilarating. The guys were thrilled, patting me on the back, telling me I did a good job. But the rush faded quickly, replaced by a gnawing emptiness. And then an idea hit me. If I could destroy that family's home, why not do the same to my parents? But this time I wanted to take what mattered most to them, their religious heirlooms, their family history. I broke into the house one evening when I knew they'd be out at the Shabbat service. I tore the place apart, smashing family photos, ripping up furniture. But the best part was destroying the religious artifacts, the menorah, the Torah scrolls. I shattered it all. Every symbol of the faith they had forced on me. Standing over the broken pieces of the menorah, a family heirloom passed down for generations, I felt nothing but satisfaction. They deserved this. I left, but I wasn't done yet. Later that night, I returned with a can of gasoline. This time, they were home. I poured the gasoline around the back of the house, struck a match, and watched as the flames began to spread. For a moment, I felt powerful again. But as the fire grew, panic set in. It was out of control, bigger than I had imagined. I ran, heart pounding, leaving the scene before anyone could see me. But I couldn't get far. The sirens were already blaring in the distance, and I watched from a distance as firefighters tried to save the house. It was too late. Most of it was gone. The next morning, the police came to my buddy's place looking for me. My parents had pressed charges. My mom had finally given up on me, and my dad was silent, showing no emotion. They took me in, and at the trial, my parents spoke about me as if I were a monster. As I listened to them, something inside me snapped. I wasn't the villain here. They were the ones who refused to let me live my life. They were the ones who pushed me to this point, but none of that mattered. The judge saw only what I had done, and he sentenced me to 5 years in prison. I've been out for a few months now, and I've had a lot of time to think. I thought I was fighting for my freedom, my right to live my life the way I wanted, but now I'm not so sure. I haven't heard from Cal or any of the guys since I was sentenced. It's like they disappeared. I realized they used me, and I let them. I was so desperate to escape my parents and their rules that I ran straight into something far worse. I don't know if my parents will ever forgive me. I don't even know if I want them to. But as I sit here day after day replaying everything that happened, I realize that maybe I was wrong. I thought revenge would make me feel whole again. But it didn't. It was a poison that consumed me, leaving nothing but destruction in its wake.